I started conscious recovery for one primary reason, and that is offering a way out of darkness and despair. When I was 2 years sober, I was at one of the most difficult moments of my life. All of those underlying issues that I hadn't yet addressed were coming to the surface. I actually reached a place that was so dark that I was on the brink of considering suicide. When I got sober in a time and place where people were using this narrative that sounded something like this. Don't worry about all of that. Just don't drink. If you don't drink today, it's a successful day. And what was happening for me is I was thinking, yeah, I had a successful day. I haven't had a drink for 18 months, but why do I feel this way? Why is there so much pain and disconnection still happening in my life? Around that time, I met a woman named Mary Helen Brownell who changed my life. She was one of the most enlightened beings I had ever met. There was something about being in her energy field that had such a profound effect on me. What was happening for me, and I wasn't yet completely aware of it, is that I was walking around with this narrative, believing I was broken. There's something wrong with me. The world is not safe. Meeting Mary Helen changed that because she wasn't saying to me, just don't drink today and your life is successful. She was saying to me, honor your path, honor where you're at. Let's take a look at how we actually not only heal the underlying root causes of your addiction, but return to that place within you that is still unharmed and unharmable. Meeting her changed my life in such a powerful way. I want to go back and tell some of my story because I think it actually points to why this was so profound for me at that time of meeting Mary Helen. I remember coming into this world and feeling so present, so happy, so filled with joy. As a matter of fact, my mother often says I was the happiest baby or toddler that she's ever met. I actually have really early memories of being filled with joy. Lying in the backyard on a hot summer day, mesmerized by life, feeling the sun hitting me. Looking at a blade of grass and wondering who or what created this. The magic of a butterfly, the smell of a flower. I spent the first few years of my life experiencing this connection, this awe, and this wonder. And along the way, that experience began to diminish, and I began to believe that I was broken, that there was something wrong with me. There's a lot I can point to that caused this separation, this shutting down. I'll say it this way because it's the simplest way to say it. I came into the world as a whole and perfect spiritual being, and I found myself in a world that was teaching me about competition, about good, bad, right, and wrong. I learned about war. I heard people saying things that were derogatory about women, about people of color, about gay people. Here I was, this young, effervescent boy, born into a time and place, the 1970s in Indiana, where maybe not everyone was going to applaud and celebrate this effervescent young boy. So I closed off. I shut down. I built a wall around my heart. I have come to understand that not only was that the best I could do, but it actually was a brilliant strategy that saved my life. It did protect me from the pain of the world. The issue, of course, is it also protected me from the love and connection that I so deeply longed for. So by the time I was 7, I had already made some fundamental decisions about myself and the world. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and the world is not safe. I walked around with this feeling of disconnection and shame for many, many years until the age of 13, when I discovered another brilliant strategy in the form of drugs and alcohol. Once again, they saved my life. They were brilliant. They brought me out of that belief in my own brokenness and actually brought me back to the experience that I had when I was a young boy lying in the backyard mesmerized. In other words, drugs and alcohol have never been the problem. They were a solution that worked really well for me in the beginning. Because I believed I was broken, I experienced that everywhere. I didn't yet understand that what was trapped in my unconscious was creating what I called reality. I just kept wondering, why am I in these relationships with these people that are not available to me? Why am I choosing jobs that are not fulfilling? Why do, even though I'm doing so much work in recovery, why do I still feel broken or damaged? These were the questions that were haunting me at that time of my life. And as I said, I found myself nearly suicidal, sometime between 18 months and 2 years sober. And then I met Mary Helen Brownell, who with her beautiful Southern accent would say to me, "Darling, you're so precious." And I remember recoiling from that, pushing that away, because it just felt so counter to what I was holding about myself. But I had such a profound respect for Mary Helen, and I saw her as this beautiful being of light. So I started asking myself, if she sees me as precious, who am I not to? Around that same time, I also walked into a new thought center. What I discovered is not only a way out of my addiction, a way out of the thinking that was keeping me feeling stuck. I discovered a way to reconnect with my essential nature and live a life filled with love, compassion, openness, on purpose. I began to understand that thoughts create reality, and that what our unconscious biases and beliefs are what create the world that we live in. I began to understand that happiness was a choice, peace was a decision. It was a journey for me, a journey of self-discovery. And what I came to understand, not intellectually, but experientially, is that each and every one of us have a place within us that is whole and perfect, that is unharmed and unharmable. And that recovery isn't a journey outward. It isn't about learning or achieving. It's about returning to a greater reality, the great remembering of our essential beingness. What if you are also a whole and perfect spiritual being? This is why I created Conscious Recovery, a framework to assist people in reconnecting with their true nature. I started working in the addiction treatment field in 2008, and I quickly realized that most of the treatment modalities were focused on symptoms and behaviors without actually addressing the deeper root causes that drive addiction. I also quickly realized that clients were coming back to treatment 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And clinicians and counselors were having the arrogance to say to those clients, "What are you going to do differently this time?" And of course, that's an important question to ask someone who has relapsed for the 8th time. What are you going to do differently? But I began to become curious about what we as a treatment industry can start to do differently as well. Because of my own experience with Mary Helen and my years of being in recovery myself, I brought a different conversation, a different perspective to addiction treatment. As a matter of fact, I decided I was not going to call it addiction treatment. I was going to be focused on addiction healing. And that healing was really about creating a space for us to return to our true nature, to unlearn the core false beliefs that have kept us feeling stuck. The other thing I noticed is that clients felt broken, like I said. And many clinicians, counselors, and therapists, well-meaning, were trained to diagnose and treat, which in some way was only focusing more on the brokenness. I realized that support groups and therapeutic models, so many of them, were focused on what's wrong and how do we help you. Let me diagnose your symptoms and how do I help you get rid of them. I created Conscious Recovery because I wanted to offer an alternative to that, a different pathway. A way to return to our own wholeness, not in the way of what's wrong and how do I get rid of it, but what is still whole and perfect about me? What is still whole and perfect about you? How can we begin to unlearn everything that we've put on top of our inherent wholeness? How do we return to that pristine self? Rather than looking for what's wrong, how can we look at what are the beliefs and ideas that have kept me from experiencing my wholeness? In that way, recovery isn't about learning, it's about unlearning. So it started with a book. I wrote the book, Conscious Recovery, and then it became a workbook, and then an online experience, and then curriculum that I've created for treatment programs, and it has now become a worldwide movement, which I'm so incredibly grateful for. And it's profoundly simple. There are two key perspectives of conscious recovery. One, underneath all addictive behavior is an essential self that is whole and perfect. And two, conscious recovery helps you get down to the underlying root causes of addiction rather than treating symptoms and behaviors. At some point in my journey, I realized my deep purpose. And that purpose is to be a part of spreading this message. What is this message? This message is a message of wholeness, of recognizing that each of us have a past, but we're not our past. We've had experiences that are heartbreaking, but we can allow those experiences to break our heart open to a new way of being. That no matter what you've done or what's happened to you, underneath all of that is a whole and perfect spiritual being, that you are indeed unharmed and unharmable. So this is why I created Conscious Recovery, to assist you in awakening to your true nature and living a life filled with awe, wonder, compassion, and purpose. Are you ready? The moment is now.